1993 and they've worked great, chances are we're missing the boat, right? And there's some students who aren't going to respond to that same methodology of teaching that we've been doing for a long time. So I would challenge everyone to consistently think about, how can I share this information in a variety of ways to meet a variety of learners?
I had a flaw in that we had turned it on mute while we were chit-chatting. I own that one, but how about we'll have the audience give a little recap.
Sure.
So, and it's a little learning, but a little chance to do a little recall.
Okay.
So we'll put that on everyone else.
Can they see the slides?
They can.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I took some notes.
awesome.
All right, Jana.
What are you, Jana? Who's a good student today?
So we want to decrease barriers, increase opportunities, think beyond disability. For example, socioeconomic status could mean that somebody might not have internet access, they might be hungry, not be able to afford textbooks. Think about veteran status, age, language. It's important to have flexible content and assignments so that students have a variety of ways that they can demonstrate that they've met the outcomes of the course.
Yeah.
But it doesn't decrease rigor.
It doesn't decrease rigor. That's right. So you can still have a challenging class. You can still meet 200-300 level content or whatever your course is, right? With this flexibility built in. So we're still, allowing students to stretch and grow and push beyond their perceived capabilities, but we're designing with intention. So ultimately, we want to increase the number of students who can reach those learning outcomes. Did you have a comment, Abby?
No.
Oh, I thought you raised your hand.
Sorry.
I'll just randomly pop popcorn. I'm just gonna call on people. So there's 3 tenets to UDL, and there are some amazing trainings and videos out there, which we're going to share with you at the end of our training that we've discovered through our very own in-house CTL. But we've really kind of just made this as basic as possible just to kind of scratch the surface for all of you. So engagement really focuses on ways to increase student motivation to help them engage with the learning material, right? So this is where we're asking people to present the content in a variety of ways and using a bunch of different modalities so that you can motivate and interest your students. So when we're talking about sharing content in the classroom, we find that when we make it real world applicable, where students can actually take that information and apply it to their lives, they are more invested and motivated to learn that material. Opportunities to connect in and out of the classroom. So how can you cement that learning through experience, right? So allowing those students to take what they're hearing and processing and actually apply. Offering choice, right? So giving students the ability to kind of choose how they interact with the material or how they ingest the material can be something that can increase motivation. Game-based learning. I don't know how many of you have had the chance to work with Darren in CTL, but he is a great person to talk to about game-based learning and also game-based grading as well, leveling up and things like that in a class. He's a great person to talk to about some of these creative ideas, and his brain thinks of things that mine would never come up with. So using your resources is a great idea too, to expand some of these modalities that you're using. Ultimately, we're trying to help students understand why this information is important to learn. We're really connecting them to the why and trying to keep them interested and engaged. Representation. So this is offering things in more than one format, right? So if you have a really specific concept that you're trying to help students learn and it's an outcome that you're trying to achieve in your course, maybe presenting that information through lecture and slides is great, but also having a video to demonstrate some of those concepts. Maybe a comic strip or an infographic, right? Something visually interesting. Maybe having an activity where they get up and they move around the classroom and they talk and they interact, right? So coming up with all of these different ways to display or communicate the material. What we're trying to do with representation is a deeper and more complete understanding of what they are learning, okay? I would also argue this isn't necessarily part of the UDL content, but when I see representation, another thing that comes to mind is trying to be representative in students' culture and other dimensions of diversity, right? So making sure that the articles you're using or the books you're referencing or the videos you're showing show a wide variety of race, culture, ethnicity, etc., so that all of our students feel like they are also represented in the material they're learning as well. And then action and expression. So this is how students demonstrate their knowledge, right? This is how they demonstrate their competency with the material that they are learning. And so again, this is where we really push faculty to think outside the box. How can I assess my students' learning in a variety of ways? So yes, tests are a great way to measure knowledge. What are some other things you can do to measure those same outcomes? Written assignments, oral reports, or group presentations, allowing students to record a video response. If you're asking, question and answer format, maybe they can actually record a video versus writing responses. Role playing, creating visual presentations, whether it's a poster or an infographic. So allowing students the freedom to demonstrate competency in a wide variety of ways. All right, so that's a real quick down and dirty version of the UDL tenets. And so now what we'd like to do is get into showing you actual examples of things we've done in our courses to kind of apply those tenets of UDL. So we're going to be inviting a few different folks up to share some of the modifications they've made in their class. And what we're hoping to show all of you today is when we say UDL, we're not necessarily saying, all right, it's time to hit the books and redesign your entire course shell, right? We recognize the amount of work and time you've put into your course shells, and that probably feels really overwhelming. So what we want to challenge everyone today is to choose one thing. Just choose one thing in your shell, one assignment, find an extra video or an article, just do one thing to try to reach those tenets and challenge yourself to make one small change in your course shell, even for fall. So first up, we have Maya Kelly.
Okay, so I chose to highlight something I'm doing for one of my asynchronous courses. Since it's asynchronous, I don't get that opportunity to have that first day download of the basics of the nitty-gritty stuff, the navigation, where I keep things, how I've organized my course. So I usually make a little video tour, sort of a screencast where obviously they're not looking at me, they're looking at me moving my mouse around a screen. And I still do that, but I have also added in making a static job aid document that does the same thing. Although my videos are captioned and everything like that, somebody might not have the time to sit there and listen to something or watch the captions go by, or they may prefer that mode. Clearly some people we know would prefer to have it shown versus explained. Although I do have some visuals in my document walkthrough as well. I do screenshots with arrows pointing at things. But it also gives someone the ability to watch the video if they prefer that. And then if later on they're like, I know I remember everything except where this particular thing is, they may be able to open up the job aid and just hone in on it really quick instead of like scrubbing until they can figure out where in the video. So that's one choice that I offer them. They may want both, they may want one over the other. And it did not take me a whole lot of extra time to do whichever one I wouldn't have done normally. Are there any questions on that?
How did you do that?
How did I do that?
Yeah, is there like a program software?
For the video, yeah, I use ScreenPal. It used to be called Screencast-O-Matic. It is now called ScreenPal. For free, the free license that you just sign up for, you can make anything up to 15 minutes long, which is generally long enough for most things. CTL does have some additional licenses that have extra, but they are limited and not.
So
necessarily-
it's just limited by the amount of people at any given
Yeah.
time. So if it
Beginning of the
hits
semester,
if it hits the max for like, just like wait a day and usually
Right,
it's
and you
fine.
might be able to get.
But if you go in, and I can show you in the CTL org, through, the CTL 500 series, it'll say Screencast-O-Matic if you need to update the name, but you can log in.
I think you can still navigate the Screencast-O-Matic and it kicks you over, so that old name is still usable if that's what sticks in your head. I prefer that over, I believe you can do something similar in PowerPoint. You can make a screencast video, but I like the Screencast-O-Matic / ScreenPal because I can pause, get my poop in a group, or back up to the last pause point. You can't necessarily back up very easily to a specific point, but if you pause, like give yourself periodically, just take a pause, take a breath, and then keep recording. You can back over mistakes. So, you know, I might have to do the last 30 seconds over again, but I don't have to do the whole video over again. I don't think in PowerPoint it's just you're doing the whole thing, and there's not the ability to edit in the middle or on the fly, I don't think. I could be wrong. But I've had good experiences, and then of course with the job aid, that was just screenshots and screenshots using it's not the default one because it's got the ability to, I'll let people know if anybody doesn't have the ability to do screenshots and put big arrows on them with text. Be happy to share that. But that was also not
For videos, I've noticed a lot of faculty, if it's easier for you than Screencast-O-Matic or PowerPoint, have started just to use their Zoom and put themselves in the Zoom and record it as an easy way. If nobody knows that little hack.
Screen share and then,
yeah.
so instead of your face,
So you're just
just
sharing
your
the
screen
the
and
link,
moving around on it.
Yeah, you can, you can do, so.
and then you share the session link afterwards. I make too many mistakes. Well, because usually I'm doing math in them, and then more often than not, it is followed by some mild expletives that I definitely have to be able to back up. So yeah, I really lean into the edit as you go feature for myself. I'm not, can't be trusted. So, anything else? The next one. Yes. Yep. Okay. I am also unfortunately here representing Sherry Matthews in her idea. It is not a great time to be able to find interpreters, unfortunately, which is really unfortunate because Sherry is such an important person to be able to hear from, right? So thank you, Sherry, for sharing this idea with us and giving us the ability to pass it out. So what Sherry does is color and pattern coding. So when she organizes her class, they've got, you know, as you can see, if it's big enough, there's a bunch of stuff that's associated with the signature assignment. There might be a bunch of documents, there might be multiple assignments that lead up to it. And those things are all under or labeled with a JPEG that says signature assignment that not only has words that are different, but it has a pattern and colors behind it that are unique to the other categories that she has in her course. And she also checks them by turning them into grayscale images to make sure the patterns are distinctive from each other when you remove the color. So words are distinctive, so easy to spot the words, easy to spot the colors, and if colors aren't your bag, easy to spot the pattern. So it gives a really quick way for people to navigate to the subject matter that they're looking for. And so the way she does it is she uses PowerPoint and she makes the little banner thing, kind of like we do for our courses. If you've made your own banners, I know sometimes people use ones that CTL has kindly made for them. But if you make your own banner, she just makes a rectangular box, image in PowerPoint, adds all the things, the background and the pattern and the text and everything. And then she converts that to a JPEG. And then possibly maybe plays, I forgot to ask this, if she plays with when she plays with the size, right? So it gets it to a standard size. But then when she opens up, creates a new item in Blackboard from scratch, right, about say the signature assignment, the first thing she adds is that JPEG before she puts the words of the explanation. So it's right there at the top of the item or the assignment or whatever. So I thought that was a pretty, and that's, again, that's not something that takes much time and effort. Maybe the first time as you're like, but it's quick. She says it's quick and easy, and it really visually makes a really nice organization and easy for students to navigate and find what they need. Yes.
I was gonna say, I'm sure she probably also adds the alt text in there, which would be good for the screen readers to
Right,
just say
yes.
signature
That's-
assignment.
That's probably very true. Yeah, so yes.
The grayscale or turning it into black and white is also a good way to determine color contrast, that if students can see it well enough, especially on a screen. So turning it into black and white is also good for that.
That's a great point. Yeah. So yeah, so I'll do my best to answer any other questions on behalf of Sherry, and if not, I will pass them on to her and try to get you an answer.
And Sherry had shared with us an entire document of things she's doing that are following those UDL tenets, and some really innovative ideas and just some really impressive ways of thinking about UDL. So she's a great person that I would encourage you to reach out to for someone who can just maybe provide just some inspiration to you on things you can try.
Yeah, I chose this one because it felt the most like it didn't require you to be Sherry already, like Sherry's got, some of it is so kind and great ways to connect with students. And that felt so something that Sherry should share with other people because it's her, it's something, this felt like, okay, this is something I might have done, or, so it's such a good idea, but I think some of those other ideas were exceptional. But I also think someone else should not be speaking about them on Sherry's behalf. This one felt a little more easy to grab. Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. All right, Abby, next two are yours.
Just talked about touring Blackboard, but I actually am someone who uses Zoom because it's easy. I log into Zoom and then I share my screen, and make sure you put it in student view and walk through my class. I send it out in the welcome announcement, especially now that Blackboard has changed, so they can see it before they log in and say, oh my God, it looks different. I panicked the first time I saw it. Oh my God, they changed it. And then it was fine. So it's sort of to preempt that. The downside is you can't edit. My next slide, I'll tell you how to close caption once you've done the easy closed captioning method. Once you've done your Blackboard tour, if you decide to do that. The other thing I'm trying this semester, I always recommend students find audio files if they're reading a piece that's particularly hard for them to read, and some of the older pieces really are, Beowulf in particular, where we start, they're like, oh my goodness. So I'm finding them for them this semester for all of my British literature pieces. Some of them I'm making myself, and I'm doing that just because I do some of the translations myself from Middle English. So I'm doing the audio files. That's not a typical thing though. I think a lot of audio files are online. I'm using LibriVox. I have the advantage of having literature. So many of the pieces are on LibriVox already. Quick and dirty closed captioning. Upload your video to YouTube and give it an hour max, and they'll give you a rough automatic, English automatic file. And this is the steps you can get to it if you need that. Click the duplicate and edit and feel humbled by your accent. And publish when you're done. I never realized how much I sound like I'm from Eastern Ohio until I do this, and how much I say which I'm sure you've noticed. So any questions?
Can I ask a question? This
Yeah.
is gonna sound dumb, but when I go back and try to fix the subtitles, I'm actually often hesitant when, like, do I keep my mistakes in or do I take them out? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I leave them
well,
in.
Like you actually said it.
I
But
said
you
a mis-
prefer you had said it.
I
better.
said a mistake, and so like, do I fix it in the subtitles or do I leave it? So if a student is tracking along who's like second language, they'll be like, that's not what you said, or that's really confusing. But you leave your mistakes in?
I leave my mistakes in.
Okay.
From what I have learned from the rules for closed captioning, you should leave it in.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
And the
Okay.
rationale is if you are reading the lips, it would not correlate.
Okay, thank you. Great. I'm gonna look even more
I
dumb.
have added, like if it's something I'm posting into Blackboard or something, if it's a mistake that I didn't catch or something, I will sometimes make a note and say, at, 12 minutes in, there's an error in the tape, so please,
Oh, I like that. Okay.
And
A little thought bubble that said, oops. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Karen-
Like they do in,
Karen Brown put in the chat, one website I use, Smart History, they correct it in brackets or
yeah,
overlay, right?
that's what I was thinking.
Whoops. Yes, you can add the correction.
My students have enjoyed my bloopers, like, I don't know, it's authentic and, I think it's humanizing, like, we're all human and we all make mistakes, and so, man, I'll just throw it up there. Plus, who has the time to go back and re-record a 30-minute video? No.
My videos are never polished. They get what they get.
Yeah.
Which is why I use Zoom. If you want to polish, go Maya's route.
It does take longer.
We're gonna get a copy of these slides, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Cause I want that too.
yeah, I'm like, I can't remember.
Excellent. And if anyone wants me to demonstrate it later, I can on my own laptop. All right, that was all for me.
Okay,
Thanks.
awesome.
Thank you, Abby.
oh, look how good you look at.
I know,
Oh my God.
I know.
Professional.
When I put that in the slide, I was like, Kathy, you look legit, like, you're like Steve Jobs right there. I'm like, very inspirational.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
and thanks to CTL, I have a good working relationship with the whiteboard or the lightboard. So, for me, this is I have ideas, these weren't as quick, right, as maybe doing a tour. But it's something I've kind of built in over time. So I first started doing some videos of, particularly hard homework problems that students could never get and needed to go through a few times and that kind of thing. But, then through experience with students and just my own development, what I found is if I would make sorry, I'm being distracted a little, some lecture notes, they're kind of skeleton, I call them guided lecture notes, where I will include already typed up definitions or theorems, because I think it's important, we don't do enough teaching of how to read technical books, math, science, so forth and so on. So, so I like to go through that with my students, but can you imagine sitting in class waiting for every student to copy it down? So it takes way too much time and we get distracted by the copying as opposed to the interpreting and understanding. So I make notes that have space for them to add comments, highlight, do whatever they need to do to make it theirs. And then I also put all the examples written down or space for them so that, again, they're not having to copy. Graphing in your normal textbook or scratch paper is hard. So I have those things available so students can add to that in a quick and efficient manner. They're not required to use these. I've had some students say, no, I still like to do my own. And I'm like, that's great. It also keeps me more focused and I move more efficiently through the class because I like to talk a lot. So that kind of keeps me moving. And so then what I've done is with the help of CTL and also Screencast-O-Matic and Zoom is I've tried to make what I call mini lectures for all. This is for my 143, 147 classes. I think I have at least one recorded lecture for every section. And what I've found is it's beneficial, as Annie was saying earlier, we want to make these beneficial for many students. So if I have a student that's hearing impaired, or if I have foreign language learners, when I am speaking in class, I usually am flying pretty fast. We've got math vocabulary, I'm doing examples. It's hard to follow, right? And so by having the recordings, those students can go back and watch them, they can read the text, and they're then able to, you know, maybe answer some of those questions that as I'm flying through the content, they're missing what it is I'm saying. So it just helps a lot of students. I put it in all my classes now for the courses, both face-to-face and online. I have lots of students that use it as a preview for the lecture, because then they come in knowing a lot about what I'm going to talk about, and they can also say, this is the point I didn't understand. Can you explain? It's a good review. So if they did miss something in class, and then it's also for my fully online classes. Lots of times students like to know, what would your teacher say, as opposed to, even though we have all those great resources from the publisher, they want to hear it from you, and it helps make a connection. So I guess the point is again, trying to offer them multiple ways to get that information. So it's not just whatever I do in the classroom, and it's not just whatever the publisher puts for those online classes, but trying to give them extra resources they can use. Questions or comments? Yeah, Greg.
Do you find students ask for printed copies of that, of your notes in class?
What I usually do in class, I have them all so they're
Yeah.
posted with the videos as well. So I usually bring them the first week. And then I say, you do not have to use these, but if you do, and I show them repeatedly where they are. And then usually if there's one where we're gonna do a lot of graphing or something, and I think it's easier, I bring those on those days. And the students that normally print them will say, oh, thank you, I have a copy. And the others will go, oh, thanks, you know. So yeah, I bring them for about a week, and then just keep pointing them in that direction. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, so this one is mine, and this is something I'm piloting this fall in my course shell. So I've created an assignment choice board for my students. One of the things I was recognizing, I have a fair number of multi-language learners in my classes, and you know, this is their 4th, 5th, 6th language they're learning, English, and they're writing. I have a writing intensive course. We do a lot of reflection and a lot of, you know, recapping on things. And so they were struggling with that writing piece, right? And I was able to glean from their writing that they were understanding concepts and getting mastery of knowledge. But I started thinking, how much extra time are those students taking just to try to communicate what they do know through writing? And so I've created an option for students to showcase their knowledge and their understanding in a variety of ways. So for every single assignment I have in the class, they can choose to follow the traditional worksheet format that I have in Blackboard. So writing responses, you know, typing responses into the worksheet, but they can also upload a video answering the questions and talking through their thoughts. Or they can create a visual depiction. So that's either going to be a concept map, or, you know, an infographic, or some way to demonstrate their knowledge. And to make this easier on myself, I just made a common rubric that kind of shows the students what the expectations are for each level of grading. And that rubric will be applied regardless of the type of assignment they use to turn in. So I haven't done it yet. So I'm assuming there's going to be some bumps this semester with this, but you know, I'm willing to try and see if my students like it. So I'm happy to come back and share feedback at a later UDL session. Yeah.
Would you be willing to share your rubric with others? Well, again, it's that idea of being able just to look at how you
Yes, I will share.
reword it or categorize.
Yes, I will, but I am not good at rubric design. It's like something I was figuring out about myself as I was making this rubric is this is like an art in itself,
Yeah, I
designing
don't like-
rubrics. So yeah, I'll share it. begrudgingly. Another thing that I didn't put in a slide, but I just wanted to mention, and I might lean on you, Courtney, to help me explain this a little bit. But one of the things that really stood out to me during the UDL training was that in a lot of our assessment methods, we make a lot of assumption of previous knowledge. We make a lot of assumptions around what our students are bringing to the classroom, and we almost have hidden requirements and assignments. So an example I can give you is one of my adjunct instructors is very strict on APA formatting. That's her jam, right? And she's teaching a 100 level class. And so we've had a lot of conversations around like how intense can your grading really be on APA formatting when they haven't been trained in APA yet. So, you know, you might put up an assignment and say, well, this is standard for my field in psychology or social work or sociology. We use APA. So I want you to write an APA formatted paper. Like that's the expectation that you're going to have for the rest of your career, right? But what if they haven't been taught APA yet? So now we have students who are like, oh my gosh, like not only do I have to demonstrate my knowledge and competency, I have to figure out APA. So we've built in extra expectations and time into an assignment for those students who don't have that skill set. And so being mindful of those hidden assumptions you have built into your assessments and providing tools and resources to students to help get them up to speed or be able to get a grasp on that material if needed. Did I explain that well enough, Courtney?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's basic kind of when we look at kind of scaffolding and what is the, you know, what have you scaffold everything on, and how are you helping students reach that next level? You'll likely, if you have a lot of those hidden assumptions, you'll see a lot of pretty large variation in quality of your assignments and or students selecting out of submitting. So if you have an assignment where that is the case, it's probably a good one to reevaluate.
So just, go ahead, Alice, and Mr. Teacher here.
And so we also run APA papers in education. In the intro course, the grade will be weighted so that the APA formatting is only like 20% of the essay. And I break that essay down into 6 submissions. So they submit 6 times throughout the semester so that I can give them feedback each time and say, hey, this is where you're messing up your APA. This is where you're not responding to the prompt correctly. So that they get all that feedback before they submit their final paper. And then I know that in that intro course, they're still not going to have APA dialed in, but I know that they're taking and writing APA in their 220 course and their 230 course. So the ultimate goal is by the time they leave CWI, they're competent in their APA, and that's just through end courses. That doesn't include what's happening in all their other content. So it's baby steps to help them get through it.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point too, which is kind of just being familiar with your degree plan, right? Like some of us have been teaching, you know, the same 2 or 3 classes, and that's kind of our jam, and that's what we teach, and we don't really pay much attention to what our colleagues are teaching and doing, but just understanding kind of like a series in your degree plan. If you know that students are going to be getting APA education at this 200 level class, then maybe being more mindful of how you incorporate that in your 100 level, right? Or vice versa, yeah.
I love the conversation of citations because this also goes back to something you were talking about at the very beginning, which is like the cultural aspect and citation styles and plagiarism and, you know, giving credit is, we think about that in the kind of Eurocentric way.
Yes.
And not every culture or country gives respectful credit the way that Americans do. So in thinking about like, you know, how do we reach students to say, hey, this is our standard, and then have a conversation about why that's what's behind that standard, and the implications of it. It can be a cool classroom discussion too.
Yeah, I love that. I'm sure Andrea can acknowledge, as I can from the department chair perspective, that's something that comes up often is the students plagiarizing. They're not citing resources, like this is a problem, they need to fail the class. And we're like, whoa, okay, let's step back. Let's look at this and let's really try to understand what's behind this plagiarism, right? And sometimes it is intentional and sometimes it's not. And so that's a great point to bring up as well.
And I think, yeah, all this draws me back to that connections course that we took earlier this week where it was like, hey, you have a video presentation or a poster presentation that you can bring to that connections
Yeah.
thing that students can enter in without having to do any extra work. They've already done it. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Yes, always be thinking connections.
Just a last plug with the APA and also the plagiarism, because I know that Andrew put a lot of work into it, but there are badges to help. The badges in my CWI are not all inclusive, but they're meant to level set as a baseline. So you can recommend the students complete the APA badge, that they do the academic integrity, although that is part of the CWI 101. So just options for those baseline, or students that you know are lacking some of that base level.
I do the academic integrity badge by week 2 now in all my classes. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Well, and that goes back to that point of like, we're not trying to reduce rigor, right? So my advice to you is not to just stop teaching APA, right? I'm not saying that at all, or stop holding students accountable for plagiarism. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is make sure that you're providing the means and the access and the information to those students so that they, like Courtney said, level setting, right? So they can get up to speed and really understand the expectations. All right, Lindsay, take us away.
Well, so this is for my digital design and publishing class. So we cover Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. It's a very skills-based class. And so, of course, what I was finding is that students come to the class with a wide variety of skill level coming in. And I actually do a survey at the beginning of the class to ask them about their level. But students, so I'm finding that students, basically they may have barely, incidentally too, there's no prerequisite for this class. So they may not have a lot of even basic computer literacy. We have other students on the other end who maybe took courses in high school or wherever, and they're basically graphic designers. So in order to kind of figure out how we bring them all to a level of proficiency, I have assignments that kind of meet the student where they're at. So 2 different assignments here, and I do have rubrics for these as well. It just wouldn't fit on the slide. But basically for each program, they would have a skill building assignment and then a digital project at the end. So skill building is really just acquiring those skills, and I lean heavily on Adobe has an incredible library of video tutorials. And so I have always kind of offered this, but I required 10 tutorials that students would go through, and they were the same 10 for every student. Well, last year, Adobe changed their landing page and they divided these tutorials into beginner and intermediate levels. And so I was kind of caught off guard because I went to set up my class and all the links were broken. So I was like, great, let me figure this out really quick, right? And so I decided, okay, well, let's just think about this since we have this opportunity. I am going to let students decide in the skill building where they are and what they want to pick to do. So I do require, like the first 2, you can probably barely see that, and get to know Photoshop and working with layers. Beginners have to do these 2, but the intermediate or advanced users can decide, they can substitute 2 other tutorials. And then the rest of them, they have to find a tutorial that just matches that topic, but it can be any skill level they choose. And then really that one is points for completion. They complete the activity and then they get points for a reflection on what they learned, if they learned a new skill, how they applied that skill to their design. And then the digital project part, same idea. They can choose a beginner project that's a little more hand-holding, or they can do a level up challenge. So they can level up and challenge themselves with their own images that they bring, that maybe they took a picture of their cat and they want to do something fun with the cat. Fine. I'm not picking on anybody in particular.
She's here because I took this class.
She did take my class.
And my cat's featured heavily.
Honestly, her designs were amazing. I also got inspired by your infographic. I'm like, I teach a digital design class and this is super boring. So I need to like jazz up my actual assignment instruction sheets, but anyway, so the rubric on this is basically, if I have a project and I ask you for 5 images, did you provide the 5 images? Did you crop and straighten, improve lighting? Like, I don't care to what level you did this, but did you do all of these things to the image? And if you did, great, you will get the points. And did you also include a reflection on how you did this particular thing? And then I always just give feedback, and feedback is hopefully to make their designs better, but they can choose to take my feedback or disregard my feedback. If they say, no, I love my design, it's great, it's perfect, I don't care what you think, and I stick by my design, or yeah, you know what, this is probably a better way to do it. So that's how that works. Questions? We're close to time.
Lindsay, I have just a question. Do you find, have you noticed any students you were thinking this is an intermediate student, but they're doing beginning assignments?
Great question. You know, and I wish I would have taken the time. I didn't have time to like go back and really study that. I feel like there's probably some, but honestly, I would say maybe, 5% in a class. For the most part, those students who love it will challenge themselves.
Yeah.
And they will do the thing, and they will be proud of the awesome design, because at the end of the semester, they do like I've called it different things over different semesters, but basically they share their work with the class. So they want to be really proud of the cool thing they did, right? So I don't find that too often. There might be a few that I'm like, yeah, your skill level, you could do something a little better, but most of the time they just love to show off.
That's what I was hoping you'd say.
Yeah, to show.
Well, and I would challenge that perspective a little bit too, Greg, though, and say, maybe that week that student chose to do the easier assignment because that's where they were in life,
Exactly.
like who knows
Right.
what's going on that week, and they're just like, I don't have the, I just don't have it in me,
right? Where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you just did the easy one.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And I get that, like I have weeks that I'm gonna do the easy project too, so no big deal. But, yeah, so.
Thank you, Lindsay. All right, so we'd love to show you where you can find the CTL's training. Is my link not gonna work? All right, so Abby, I'm just gonna go to so first you're gonna go to organizations. And you will see Center for Teaching and Learning as one of your organizations. All faculty should be enrolled in that. Click there, and then come here to this training box, and we're looking at CTL 300, which is Course Design and Development. And 301 is the one you're looking for, which is Universal Design for Learning. All of us on the Raft have taken this training. It's fairly quick and very straightforward, but still very informative. So I definitely encourage you to check it out and get this badge. And then you'll see here extended resources and links. These videos are phenomenal. They're about 5 minutes each, so they're really easy to just bite off 1 or 2 at a time and squeeze them into your schedule, but packed full of amazing information. So 10 out of 10 recommend the CTL training if you have time to get that in this semester.
Can I have Annette is on and she actually show you some work she's done to update this? Annette, are you there? If you can talk through where she needs to go next?
Oh, I'm here, yes.
If you
So
go
if you
back,
go back to the CTL.org homepage, if you would. And then the 600 level. So the one she showed previously was just a basic introduction to UDL, nothing fancy, just like here it is. And if you go to 621, this is CTL's latest version. Oh, of course it's not available because that would make so much sense.
I bet it's the old thing. Here, we'll fix that. Thank you for pointing out some of our links needed to be. We were so tricky with some of our work.
Oh my goodness.
The move to Ultra has caught us probably a little bit more than you all. Oh, you haven't updated it. All right, there is a new wonderful training. So this one, when we talk about kind of the length and the depth, the first one at the 300 level is kind of quick, fast and dirty. We say it's 30 minutes. It probably takes you about 15 or so to get through. This one is a lot more in depth, and it's 621, and we'll make sure that link is working.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I totally recommend the training. You know, it's not a lot of time, but it has a lot of valuable information. So one of the things that we have been talking about doing within our group, the Raft, is hosting, we're gonna be hosting additional UDL trainings throughout the semester, throughout the year. And so if you're interested in staying in the loop with our Raft and learning about when those trainings are taking place, we're happy to share that information with you. We are going to be doing discipline-specific UDL trainings, and so we'll have like a humanities training, social sciences, so keep your eyes open for that. We were hoping to have a little extra time for brainstorming today, but obviously we didn't get to that. I would invite any of you who are thinking about modifying something, or you just want to run an idea by somebody on the Raft, please feel free to reach out to one of us using those emails that were listed, and we're happy to brainstorm and spitball with you individually. So, Kathy.
I just wanted to add, so those later trainings, we're gonna try to have one per month this fall semester, and CTL is gonna help us coordinate those. But just because we say they're focused, like the first one's gonna be STEM focused, that means Maya and I will bring examples from our courses, which are STEM classes, but that does not mean they would not be helpful for any faculty to attend. Right?
Absolutely.
And also we are both STEM, but we're also the same discipline. So if there are people, STEM people, not math, we would love to also bring you as
Yeah.
co-hosts that day.
Yeah, and every training is gonna look different because members from the sub-raft are partnering to determine kind of the direction they want to take their little session. So I think you'd get something out of attending all of them for sure. All right, well, thank you all for your time and being here today. Hopefully you're all staying for the student panel that's up next.
And if you want to run and grab some food, I think it's available, so lunch. Of course, we coordinated with student services, and so you just have to sign and you get a free lunch if you like.
Is it in the last?
What?
I got it.